Jaya Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari Jai Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Bhala Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Ranjana Jashodanandana Jaya Braja Chandana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jai 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 Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Srimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shishi Guru and Shigoranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the Summon Bonum, Chapter 57, Satrajit Murder, the Jewel Return, Text 14 and 15. Pratyakyatta Sachakruram Parsnigraham Ajachata Sopyaha ko virudhyeta vidvan ishwarayor balam pratyak pratyakyata chachakruram parsnigrahan ajachata Sopyaha ko virudhyeta vidvan ishwarayor balam pratyakyata sachakruram parsnigrahan ajachata Sopyaha ko virudhyeta vidvan ishwarayor balam. Please chant. Pratyakyata sachakruram parsnigrahan ajachata Sopyaha ko virudhyeta vidvan ishwarayor balam. Pratyakyata sachakruram parsnigrahan ajachata Sopyaha ko virudhyeta vidvan ishwarayor balam. Pratyakyata sachakruram parsnigrahan ajachata Sopyaha ko virudhyeta vidvan ishwar ajor balam. Pratyakyata sachakruram parsnigrahan ajachata Sopyaha ko virudhyeta vidvan ishwar ajor balam. Pratyakyataha refuse saha he satadvanda he sattvadanda cha an akruram akrura parsnigraham for help ajachata beg saha he he akrura api also aha said kaha who virudhyeta can stand against vidvam knowing Ishwarayoho of the two personalities of Godhead, Balam, the strength. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. His appeal refused Sata Dandwa, went to Akrura and begged him for protection. But Akrura similarly told him, quote, who will oppose the two personalities of Godhead if he knew their strength? Text number 15. Ja idam lilaya vishwan srijatyavati hanti cha chestan vishwa srijosyasya navidur mohita yaya. Translation. Quote, It is the Supreme Lord who creates, maintains, and destroys this universe simply as his pastime. The cosmic creators cannot even understand his purpose, bewildered as they are by his illusory Maya. Purport. The use of the singular Yaha, quote, he, who, end of quote, indicates that the frequent reference to, quote, the two lords, Krishna and Rama, do not compromise the firm principle of monotheism expressed in the Srimad Bhagavatam. As explained in many Vedic literatures, the one Supreme Lord expands himself into innumerable forms, yet he remains the one and almighty God. For example, we have this statement in the Brahma Samhita 5:33. Advaita Nachuta Nanadira Nanta Rupam. Quote, the one supreme Lord is infallible and beginningless, and he expands himself into innumerable manifested forms. End of quote. Out of regard for the spirit of the Lord's pastimes, in which he expands himself and appears as his own older brother, Balaram, the Bhagavatam here refers to the two Lords. But the bottom line is that there is one supreme Godhead, one absolute truth, who appears in his original form as Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitangena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Brahmapada Swami Iti Namine. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirveshesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, Satadandva is trying very hard, we hear in the narration, to save himself. We see that when you do wrong, even when it's particularly under as part of whatever plan we may have made, if we do wrong, it's going to catch us at one time. Especially when you are in the Holy Dham. So we have here this personality Satadandva, along with Kritavarma and Akrura. They all Dwarkavasis. They're residents of the Holy Dham of Dwarka, where the Lord is present and is a presiding personality. Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram, both of them are there. And by whatever circumstance, especially in the Holy Dham, especially in a holy place, if we do wrong, Krishna will expose and there will be a suitable punishment that will come. And that's something very sobering for especially for devotees who have the great fortune of living in the temple. That we have to be very careful of not creating any type of offenses for the Lord. So, for sure, in our, you know, beginning stages of Krishna consciousness, all of us, we're going to make mistakes. But if our heart is in the right place, then the Lord will easily forgive us. He doesn't take a great deal of um, personal offense towards himself. He doesn't take it extremely serious. He's very kind and very merciful. But if somehow or other we offend his dear devotees, that is very serious. And that's the part that can really create havoc. And basically, um, Lord Chaitanya compares that as a just let loose a mad elephant into a beautiful garden that we've been cultivating, the garden of our devotion. So this mad elephant is Vaishnava Aparat. And the situation with Satadandwa is that in spite of him being part of the, a Dwarkavasi, he maintained some darkness in his heart. The darkness in the heart doesn't allow us to fully see and understand the Supreme Personality of God. In one sense, we just see it as we just bring down the, the presence and the supremacy of the Lord. When the darkness in the heart takes over, then that vision and understanding becomes covered. And it's something quite scary to not only experience but also witness. You see it, how it takes place, that actually you start to undermine um, the, the directions of the Lord, the presence of the Lord, and also the devotees of the Lord. So we have to be very observant of these things if it ever comes, because the way this type of offenses manifest is that they start to spiral down. And one is getting going, it's like when you're being caught in a whirlwind, you know, in the beginning you start in the outer rings of that whirlwind, and it's slow. But as you go down, it starts to go fast, 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 and you're going fast very, very quickly. So, offenses towards the devotees, it manifests like that. It becomes, sort of almost okay, it's okay. It's like sort of normal. And then all of a sudden it starts to escalate. And then when it starts to go fast, going down in that route, then it's very difficult to come back. It's very difficult. So we have these three personalities. One got heavenly punished by the Lord because of the darkness in his heart. The other two, they were forgiven by the Lord, although they do have to suffer certain reactions. Akrura have to suffer some reactions. And Kritavarma have to suffer reactions too. Kritavarma was one of the main generals in the army of the Brishnis of Krishna. And when it came to the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when Krishna offered both Arjuna and Duryodhana the choice to either have him or have his army, and we know Arjuna chose Krishna, and Duryodhana was very happy to have the whole army. Kritavarma have to fight on the side of the Kurus, on the side of Duryodhana, against the Pandavas and Krishna. And Kritavarma got killed in the battlefield of Kurukshetra by who killed him? I can't remember the name, but one of the characters on the side of the Pandavas, who also was a Yadava, Satyaki. Satyaki. There's a whole history with Satyaki, but Satyaki killed Kritavarma, and as he killed him, he was chastising him. You know, you offender and this and that, and murderer, plot, all these type of things. So here's your punishment. So we have to be very careful. That's immoral. Now, this is a very interesting point that these two verses bring, and it's being highlighted in the purport, that the reference of the two supreme personalities of Godhead is something that in itself is contradictory. It's a contradictory sort of a statement, because if we say supreme, when we talk about the definition of God as supreme is one without a second. And then, so if we say one without a second, but there's two of them, then we have a conflicting statement there. So the two supreme personalities of Godhead. And then Akrura immediately established that a singular one. So there's two, in the same breath, basically, he's saying, he's responding to Satadandva, but how you going, if you have some intelligence, how are you going to go against the two supreme personalities of Godhead? And then he say, he, now referring to one, is the source of everything. He is the cause of everything. So it appears that he's contradicting himself. But this is a very important subject matter to understand, especially when we're presenting Krishna consciousness. Because our tradition is described as monotheistic. Now, in the Western terms of theology, you have these two boxes, monotheistic and polytheistic. And from the Western perspective, the worship in Indian tradition is polytheistic. And the Judeo-Christian traditions are monotheistic. Now, we Vaishnavas, we present the fact that we are a monotheistic philosophy, a religion. We understand that there is one supreme personality of God. Now, when we have, especially suppose, I have this a lot, when groups from university or schools come to the temple, and sometimes I have to, present to them. And then especially when you go to describe the tradition of deity worship, you have to explain deity worship to them in a manner that is understandable. Then when you say, well, we worship, we're monotheistic, we worship the supreme personality of God. There's one God. God is one without a second. So there's no questions of being uh, Hare Krishna God, uh, Christian God, a Muslim God. They're all the same supreme being. It's one God, one without a second. And then we explain, there you have Gaurnitai, there you have Radha and Krishna, there you have Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. So you say there, you have there, um, 7 personalities. Are they all God? Well, Shrimati Radharani is the energy of God, but it's not different than God. Sometimes we say it's the female manifestation of the Supreme, which is all truth. So how do we explain that? How do we explain these multi-forms that are there? So when you worship Gauranitai, or Krishna Balaram, or Kishore Kishori, or Jagannath Baladev and Subhadra, is that, you're worshiping, is that monotheistic or that's polytheistic? You're worshiping many. So it is important to understand and to be able to answer that. And in the philosophy of the Srimad Bhagavatam, as delivered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we understand this principle. To understand the absolute truth is to understand the philosophy of Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, the word Achintya means that it's inconceivable, that is not something that is part of our conceived reality or experience in this material world. But it's something that is transcendental, that is beyond the experience of the material senses. Because the absolute truth is simultaneously one and different. So there is simultaneously oneness and simultaneously diversity. By his inconceivable energies, Achintya Shakti, we have Achintya Prema, so Achintya Shakti, he can manifest this. He can manifest this simultaneously one and different. He can be one, but he can actually manifest many. Without compromising the underlying principle that there is one original supreme personality of God, who is the source of everything. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the most important verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that is called Paribhasa Sutra. This word Paribhasa means the verse, the single verse that defines the whole philosophy of the particular Vedic literature. It's almost like the one that gives the full definition, the full picture of the whole book. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that Paribhasa Sutra is in Canto 1, Chapter 3, text number 28. That verse appears, the chapter is the answer of Srila Sutta Goswami to the questions of the sages of Naimisharanya of please tell us about the Supreme Personalities of Godhead, different manifestations in this world, all his incarnations, and the pastimes that he performed with those incarnations. And Srila Sutta Goswami goes on to describe the many different incarnations of the Lord. Actually, he described a partial list of the most important incarnations, explaining that is the incarnations of the Lord. Actually, the word that is used is avatar. The term incarnation is a term that is used to refer of the Lord's appearance in this material world. But the term incarnation also can be confusing because the term, the etymological meaning of incarnation is one who takes into flesh. It comes from a Latin word, in Spanish, carne is flesh. So it's entering into a flesh, into a body. But we understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when he descends into this world, descends in his original or transcendental spiritual form. He doesn't take a material body. So avatar is the descent of God, is when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears. So Srila Sutta Goswami says that the manifestations of the Lord and his pastimes in the material world are unlimited. They're countless. It's like if you sit down by the ocean and try to count the waves. They're unlimitedly coming and coming and coming. There is no count. But here are the principal ones. So he goes and enumerates the principal manifestations of the Lord. And which includes all the avatars, and on which one of those avatars is Krishna. And actually explain how those originally you have these Purusha avatars. So these Purushas means the supreme controllers, which is the Lord Vishnu form, Mahavishnu, and then Mahavishnu expands into a Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who enters into each universe, and then Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, who becomes the super soul. So all these manifestations of the Purusha, through these Purushas, then all different Lila avatars and Shakti-Avesh avatars. Lila avatars is the manifestation of the Lord, just like those 10 Dasa avatars or the 10 avatars. And Shakti-Avesh avatars, how the Lord manifests or descends actually, or better to say, he empowers with his own Shakti or his own powers a particular living entity to perform pastimes or actions as he will himself. So anyway, Sutta Goswami names all kinds of different appearance of the Lords in this world. But then in this verse, he said that all these different incarnations, it reads like this. See here. He say all of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. So he established these two categories of how Krishna expands himself. One is called Amsa and the other ones are called Kala. Amsas is when he directly expands himself. So the first of the Amsas of the Lord is Lord Balaram. He directly expands into Lord Balaram. And from Lord Balaram, then he expands into this, it's called the Chaturvyuha, or the four expansions that comes from Lord Balaram. That is Pradumya, Aniruddha, Shankarshan, and Vasudev. Vasudev, Pradumya, Aniruddha, and Shankarshan. So these four are expansions of Lord Balaram and their Vishnu forms. From Shankarshan in the Chaturvyuha, then he again do four. Same. Now, I don't have all the explanations of why you duplicate that. It's there in the scriptures, but I don't know. Then from that Sankarshan, the second Sankarshan, then all the Narayan forms that are presiding the many, many different Vaikuntha planets expands. So then you have unlimited different Narayan forms. And in the different planets, the difference between them is how the four arms are holding whatever, the club, the lotus flower, the disc, and what's the other one? The disc, the conch shell, the conch shell. So then you have different Narayans in different Vaikuntha planets have a different organization of those four symbols. And then from Narayan, Lord Vishnu expands, Mahavishnu. Now Mahavishnu is considered the Purusha in relationship to the material creation. Because from Lord Mahavishnu, all the different material universe manifests. So from the perspective of the material world, Lord Mahavishnu is the origin. So Lord Mahavishnu, now the Purusha, manifests in these three forms. Karuna Dakshay Vishnu, who is Karana, means the causal ocean that's in the spiritual world. Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who is in the material world, in the universe. And then Shirodakshay Vishnu, who is also within the universe but manifests as the super soul. From this Lord Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, then all the different avatars in the material world manifest, enters. So they all consider Kala, especially the avatars, the different Lila avatars. They're considered Kala. In the Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma explains that. One of the verses that we recite in the Brahma Samhita, Ramadi Murtisu Kala Niyamedatishta. So it's very beautiful. Same thing that is explained by Sutta Goswami, the same understanding Lord Brahma expresses in the Brahma Samhita. It reads like this. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifests himself personally as Krishna, and the different avatars in the world in the form of Ramana, Sringha, Vamana, etc. His subjective portions. So he translates Kala, Ramadi Murtishu, Kalani Yamena as his plenary portion or his objective portion. So these are so there is a difference, between all these manifestations of the Lord that are expansions or expansion of his expansions and the original personality of God. And that's the part that we have to clearly understood, that although he manifests in different ways for a particular type of purpose that he has, there is an original personality of Godhead who is the source of everything that we fully worship and we accept. And according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, this Paribhasa Sutra is because it defines the most important understanding, the underlying, the overarching understanding in the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is that Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, is the original personality of Godhead. And thus, Krishna worship is above everything, the worship of Krishna. Lord Brahma also defines that. He describes it in a verse in the Brahma Samhita, that he gave this analogy of when you have so many candles and you light all the candles, and all the candles have the same illuminated power, so they're all equally in power, but there's one original candle that lights all of them. That's Lord Brahma's explanation of Krishna's position. Therefore, I worship Govinda. So, when we explain our philosophy, we are monotheistic because we worship that supreme being, the origin of everything. The same way how Srila Vyasadeva kicks off the Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I worship Krishna because he's the absolute truth. And he says, Jammadhyashe, Jatambayat, Itarastas Chatersu Abhigyashwara. That I worship him because he's the cause of all causes. He causes the creation, and he maintains and he annihilates his universe. He is fully cognizant of everything, and he is Swarat, means that he's supremely independent. And when Prabhupada explains about this, is that if you want to understand God, when we define God as one without a second, is that if you find, Prabhupada explains, if you find everything has a cause. Everything has a cause. So if you go on and say, well, myself, how is that I'm existing? Oh, because my mother and my father. And why my mother and my father exist? What is the cause? Oh, they're my grandfather, and so on. And you go on and on and on with everything that you find that there's a cause. When you reach that personality that it has no cause, then that is God. So when we hear about all these different personalities, then Lord Balaram, he expands from Krishna. Lord Vishnu, he expands from Balaram. All these different incarnations, Rama, Nrsimha, Vamana, they expand from Lord Vishnu. So, but that original one, that's Krishna. So this is a very important subject to understand and to be able to explain. So um, when we present the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, we have to say that in one sense, the Western process to understand the absolute truth is there, is sufficient, but it doesn't go as deep as the philosophy, the Bhagavad philosophy. The Bhagavad philosophy is very deep and detailed, so it's much more complicated. So when we talk about the concept of monotheism, it's monotheism that is explained in different world religions. And when you come to the Vaishnava theology, it's quite detailed and expands into volumes and volumes. So it's a much more in-depth understanding of the tattva, or the truth of the personality of Godhead. So we're very fortunate to be able to receive in a way that is quite accessible and understanding for regular people like many of us, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and all our Vaishnava acharyas, to give us this most elevated uh, knowledge, divya gyan, or transcendental knowledge. Any comments or questions? Get the microphone.
Hare Krishna. The first question I have is about understanding the difference between the avatar and incarnation. Because you were saying that incarnation, and I don't know if you were saying it with the Vedas or just kind of the definition of incarnation, but there's that element of like manifesting within the flesh, but the Supreme Lord comes and he's in his spiritual body. So if that's the case, like I guess what's that understanding between the two when they use the difference between incarnation and avatar within the Vedas?
Yeah, it's a sometimes you have terms in the Veda that doesn't have an accurate translation or word in our vocabulary that sort of explain the term. Like same thing with dharma. Dharma is very, very deep. But sometimes Prabhupada says sometimes dharma is translated as duty or religion. But dharma, Prabhupada explains, is something that cannot change. Religion can change. I grew up in a Catholic world, and now I'm a Hare Krishna. So, you can change religion, you can change occupations, you can change all that, but Dharma doesn't. So, there's not a word that you can use in the English of actually just modern languages that can accurately define the Sanskrit term. So, it's similar with avatar. So, so the word that is used is in general is incarnation, but it's not an accurate, it's not fully accurate. But from the perspective of explaining, this term avatar, incarnation in this case doesn't mean the, etymological sort of uh, definition of the term, but it means the descent, that the Lord descends, enters into this world. In general, when you enter into this world, you incarnate. That's for, that's, so when the Lord enters into this world, he doesn't take a material body, but he enters, so it's more in terms of that, the entrance into this world. So that's what it means.
And in trying to understand the expansions, so like you gave the example with Lord Balaram and how he has his 4 expansions, and then it goes all the way down the line to Mahavishnu, who then creates the material manifestation. So is Lord Balaram and I guess those previous expansions before Mahavishnu, do they appear in the spiritual world, and that's where that expansion begins?
Yes, this is all expansions of expansions that are all transcendentally, and they're all manifested in the spiritual world. And there's unlimited planets, spiritual planets, transcendental planets. And there is a supreme planet that is Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna's abode. So why Krishna designs? That's a good question to find like that. In one sense, there is diversity. And there is diversity because Krishna, in one sense, this is something that I remember hearing. He enjoys diversity. That's why he's called Rasa. What's the name of the joy of Rasa? Um, I can't remember the Sanskrit term, but he enjoys the taste of different things, different relationships, different connections, different moods. And because of that, he's unlimited, so there must be unlimited, type of exchanges, this and that, variations. So in different planets, maybe because, I don't want to speculate, but the whole thing is about Krishna enjoys diversity, and he manifests that diversity. So it's simultaneously then there's a oneness and there's the diversity.
Oh, and then last question was Vaishnav Aparada. I hear that a lot, but I'm not too clear on what that means.
Vaishnava aparat, what does that mean? It means offenses towards the devotees. Vaishnava aparat means offense. So there's nama aparat, there's seva aparat, there's Vaishnava aparat. So in the beginning of our Krishna consciousness, when we are still influenced by our material condition, then we, in the practice of sadhana, we do commit, not, is expected that there is offenses, nama aparat. So we're still chanting with offenses, meaning that, one of the 10 offenses or several of the 10 offenses, we are still working to try to overcome. We still, many of us at least, have a great struggle to be attentive while chanting. So all the things, these are nama apparat. And there's results of nama apparat, it creates blockages. So therefore, there's an effort to avoid them. And there's seva apparat. When you're doing devotional service, then you may commit, some mistakes or some you inattentive also while doing your seva, so your devotional service, so that becomes also an offense. The Lord is very um, very generous when it comes to those type of um, offenses. He there's consequences, but he's always very very encouraging and very supportive, and keeps helping you on that. When it comes to Vaishnava aparad, offensive to the devotees, then that becomes quite dangerous, especially when it goes fast down the whole thing, and it always ends in that you ended offending, the the advanced devotees of the Lord, on the spiritual master, and it can also go all the way to offending our Vaishnava Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, and like that. So it's dangerous, and that definitely finishes you. At least in the only cure for that is somehow or other you do the Durvasa Muni program, that you just go and fall flat at the lotus feet of the Vaishnava and beg forgiveness, and you receive forgiveness from the Vaishnava. Because the Lord that's the whole pastime. You know that pastime, no? It's explained in the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam, the pastime of Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni is this powerful sage in the universe, and he tried to kill Ambarish Maharaj, who was a pure devotee of the Lord. And then he created this fiery demon to destroy Ambarish Maharaj. The story goes, there's a lot of details. But he wanted to kill, and he acted on that by creating this demon who was meant to kill Ambarish Maharaj. And Lord Vishnu sent his Sudarshan chakra, destroyed the demon, and then went on to kill Durvasa Muni. And there was Durvasa Muni trying to escape the Sudarshan chakra, through all the universe, going to this one, and this one to try to take shelter. Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and everybody, just like a Satadanda is doing to Akrura and Nitrava. No, are you crazy? We don't, we can, there's no way of stopping, the Lord's will. Prabhupada explains this, what is it? If the Lord wants to kill you, no one can save you. If the Lord wants to save you, no one can kill you. So finally, Durvasa Muni went to the spiritual world. He had that power. He went to Vaikuntha and begged Lord Vishnu to please forgive him and to save him. Because Lord Vishnu, sent the Sudarshan chakra, and Lord Vishnu tells him, I'm powerless. My devotee controls me, because I'm in the heart of my devotees, and my devotees are in my heart. So if you want to be safe, you take shelter of my devotee, and then I can save you. And then my devotee can save you. Otherwise, I'm powerless on that. So if one is fortunate enough, after committing Vaishnava aparad, we better understand that we have to go and beg forgiveness from the devotee. But in general, it's so dangerous, that path, that there's a point that is a point of no return. You can even, uh, break from the pride that led you to that whole path to go and ask for forgiveness. So we have to be very careful. That's a very, very important aspect. So in general, don't take anyone for granted. Even, apparent simple or newer or unexperienced or whatever. We just careful not to, very, very thoughtful, not to offend. And if you find that some devotee feel, sometimes even without you trying to be offensive, but sometimes by misunderstanding someone takes offense, even at that situation, they also, you know, please forgive me if by somehow or other, I offend you. We have to be thoughtful, that's all. Be very mindful and very, very conscious of others and how our actions affect others. And consciously or unconsciously, in one sense. So, well, that doesn't make sense. We have to be conscious. So, what I'm saying is that we have to be conscious of how we affect others, even if the others, or even if it's not our intention, but we have to be always monitoring these things. That's it. That's how I understand it. Okay. Someone else? Any other comment? Adeline, turn.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I just want to say thank you for this class. This is really important information, and it was really helpful for me to hear all of this. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Krishna Archon.
I was just reflecting on that definition of incarnation, that it means sort of manifesting in a kind of flesh form. And I guess it's tied up to expansion in one sense, because the incarnations are expansions. So it draws more attention, at least from the Vedic perspective, to what is the composition of the body that is taken on, and considering it's a spiritual body, it also makes it more understandable, the expansion, because if you're talking about eternity, bliss, and knowledge being the composition of a body, it certainly doesn't involve the material elements, so it even makes expansion more easily understandable.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that is manifesting a body, but that body is not made of material elements. Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks. Chinte, you have anything to add?
Hare Krishna, thank you for the class. I have another question about the offenses. So, let's say, what is actually, how do I know if I committed an offense, because I think in my thoughts, I often, do some aparat. Sometimes it's hard to control the thoughts in my head. Should I ask for forgiveness if I think, that I committed an offense, like in my thoughts, or an offense if I actually said something verbally, and then I think that it's not good, something like that, or I shouted loud, I said it out loud, what is, how do I know that is it like my feeling that I feel that I said something bad or offended, or I thought my thoughts, So because I need, sometimes I feel that I need to ask for forgiveness, but then it's just all in my head, just the process of my thoughts.
Yes, yes. I think the intention is what it counts. So if I'm sincerely um, want to cultivate this mood of respect towards others, and you know if that's my intention, that actually um, to be thoughtful, and then if I feel I may have offended a devotee, if it's in my heart, if it's whatever, we are where we are, in the position that we are. I may have, these different, we come also with a baggage that comes from experiences in this life and previous life that is affecting how we process things. So that's there, it's natural, we all have it. And according to that, I'm going to be processing the things, the interactions that I have. So it's what it is. If I process something, if I feel, because I'm paying attention to the thing, I want to do the things right. And if I feel, with something I say or something I acted may have hurt or offending someone, that it may be or maybe not the case. It may be all here because how I'm processing things. Nevertheless, if my intention is that, then that comes across. It gets noticed not only by Krishna, who is within your heart and is giving you thought intelligence, he's giving you realization, he's directing in one sense. And then the other devotees will feel. The intentions always get communicated at the end. And that always comes across. If our intention is something else, it's about myself. It's about, me feeling good about myself. Oh, just see how how righteous I am, or how humble I am, or this and that, and I get to be noticed for being, oh, please forgive me, blah 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 blah. If the intention is not other but to, then that also comes across, and that's the one that gets us in trouble, because it's all self-centered. It becomes more like a means to get attention to yourself, not to serve or to become better. So the important thing is like that. I would say follow your heart and monitor your intentions. And then, we're safe on that. Okay, last question.
I just wanted to comment on the question that you had, and I have to kind of search through my notes in the verse where it specifically said it, but I remember I had a question about like Vaishnav Aparada as well, and like if we're thinking something, does that mean that we've also kind of committed that offense, or that we're responsible for that thought, even though it's not necessarily something we may like mean to think? And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's in the first canto. I just have to find which chapter and verse. But in one of the purports, it states that within the age of Kali Yuga, we're not like our thoughts ultimately aren't. If we think something, we're not like held accountable for that per se. It's when we go and put action towards it that we're held accountable for what those things are. Because I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I know I've committed Vaishnava Aparada all the time in my head, But it's when you actually fulfill that action that it then becomes a responsibility, or like an essence of karma that we're responsible for. But I'll look for the actual information and I'll share it with you.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Tarantarashman Bhagavatam ki jai.